All right.
All right, let's try this again.
And we're
And again,
live.
we are live, and apparently audio is working at least between the presenters. I hope to God it's actually working for attendees. Um, let's go ahead and bring everybody up to date about this. So first of all, there's been a recurring problem about businesses that have, or accounts, email accounts that have both a profile and a page. And so we found a workaround for that, posted about that on the blog. Google on Wednesday or Thursday last week said they fixed it. Several people verified it was fixed. I tested it this afternoon. It's not fixed for us. We just had unknown problems with audio where we couldn't get it to work, and we kind of jumped out and came back in again, and now it appears to work. And people are reporting that they can actually hear us loud and clear. So that's a win. Steve still reports he's seeing a reloading, but that may actually be a delay in the internets. So, if anybody continues to have sound problems, if you can't hear me, if you can't hear me, stop making noise, Dan. Anyway, point is, if this is working, great. If it is not working, let us know. There. Hopefully they can read lips. So, Steve says you're back and I can hear you. Thank you, Steve. All right. So let's please move on. God, what a distraction. Here we are 15 minutes in and we haven't actually done anything. So Dan is going to actually do a presentation today about the top 3 things that businesses and agencies in general tend to screw up in AdWords that's probably costing you money or leaving profits on the table. And so, Dan, you want to introduce that and go ahead and kind of jump into the presentation since we're already working just a little bit behind the clock here. Dan?
Hear me?
Yes. There you
Okay,
go.
fantastic. It's good that you can hear me because I'm speaking words and stuff. And
Indeed.
you would think that somebody would be able to hear you and you were speaking words and you were hanging out in the Google Hangout. Hi, everybody. I'm Dan. I was hoping to be able to hit you with 3 case studies today, but honestly, the first one went well over our intended time limit for the formal presentation portion of our Hangout. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus in on the first one because it actually has some elements of all the others in it.
Cool.
So let me see here. I got to get the thing on the thing to work with the thing, right? Otherwise, there won't be any things left.
Good use of nouns, Dan. Real good use.
I'm a big noun man, Leslie.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. Yeah.
Oh, come on. No, damn it. Okay, so each ball thing, I'll actually show my...
Yeah, so Dan is having his usual...
Or do...
Yeah, so this is what we're dealing with here is the bandwidth issue, Dan. So, yeah, I'm just saying.
Still waiting.
Yeah, well, this may be a this may actually be a total pipe size problem.
Could be. Yeah, stop script. Yes. A Google Plus script. Oh, well, that's lovely. Yes, I'm glad that Google runs so much script on their stuff. All right. So it's the frickin' Hangout. Okay. Anyway, maybe that'll stop. Okay. So can I show my screen? Can I show people my presentation? We'll see in a moment, won't we? Okay. We've got a screen. There's a presentation on it. We're looking at the slideshow. No, we're not looking at the slideshow.
We're looking at you.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Thank you for telling me that. Okay, so let's try and do the screen sharing thing if it will let me. Oh my, what a horrible, horrible... No! God darn it. All right, Leslie, I'm feeling kind of punty right now, but I don't know how long you want to wait to see if this actually functions.
We've done it before. What's the problem? And we lost Michelle.
I don't know. Mercury retrograde, pal. Oh, come on.
So,
Yeah, we're not even to where I've been given an opportunity to attempt to share my screen yet. So we're going to try that again.
and now you're frozen.
Do that. Come on! Ah! Okay. Maybe it's actually going to start screen sharing.
Yep, it's beginning there.
Am I backwards?
Nope, you minute. That's good. Just go to full screen.
Okay, super. Great. Now I got to get the right window because.
And Dan, just from a message I saw come up, I think that you may have some issues about what Google account you're logged into, but we'll talk about that offline. I think that may have been the root of the problem.
Okay, it's the same one that I've always used, but if you want to switch that, we'll switch to whatever you want me to do. We'll just,
no, there's another one. It's not
Chrome.
There's another one, so we'll move on from there. So.
Okay.
And yes, Steve, these are frustrations, and actually, let's to the point. So I just saw pop up that an account that just joined the Hangout, which it didn't, which is not an account that is an account that Dan commonly logs into, but is not the account that he has joined in this Hangout. And this is the recurring problem. What Google did, when was that? 3 years ago, with the whole Google Plus and one sign-in for the web, is basically screwed up every single thing that we do with Google. I mean, I can't think of a single thing that was good about what they tried to do there. And so, Steve, to your point, yes, he says, I'm so glad I'm not the only one in the world who has these frustrations. Makes me feel so much better. I feel your pain. And Michelle got kicked out again. So what the hell that's about? So, yes, if there's like any browser on your machine that is logged into any other Google account than the one that you're actually trying to run on a Hangout, you bear the risk of actually having problems, and I think that's what's going on. But anyway, so Dan, we are actually seeing your screen.
Fantastic.
So let's. Why don't you go ahead and hopefully Michelle can stay on for more than like 30 seconds at a time. I'm not sure what's going on there.
I think we're back now.
Okay, good. So.
And logged in as myself.
That helps. So.
Can we see my screen?
Yep. Go ahead and go full screen.
Is it full screen?
It's not yet, but there's some delay associated with doing that. So why don't you just go ahead and move on. For the 40 plus attendees would like to actually get to the presentation.
It says every fifth word, Leslie. This is ridiculous.
Well, that's true. So, and it's probably the reason you're not quite full screen yet. But we'll work on your pipe later. So, yeah, go. We're hearing you fine, Dan.
Okay, great. But can we see my screen?
It's not full screen yet, but
okay,
just go ahead and present.
Do this again. Here we go. Here, we'll just make it as big as we can. That would be awesome. Okay. So, this case study is an interesting one in a lot of different ways. First of all, it's a little bit interesting in that the type of conversion that they're after is a little bit of a hybrid conversion. That is, there are leads that get generated and then those leads later convert. And so sometimes you can actually measure that secondary conversion and sometimes you can't. In this case, we happen to be in really good shape on that. And in fact, when we came into this engagement at the end of November, it was honestly one of the better looking accounts in terms of how it was being managed. It was really done, sort of as we say, by the book. So whether it's Andrew Goodman and Mona Ellis, I can never say Mona's name right, Christine Churchill, Perry Marshall, Howie Jacobson. There's so many people out there that have kind of done the basic program, and a lot of it is stuff that I taught and wrote about back 10, 12 years ago in the search management kit. For those of you particularly down under who have copies of that. All right, thank you guys. Let's quit that. Okay, so the ad groups were very tight and focused. We didn't have a problem with having tons of keywords in a single ad group because that's.
Hey, Dan, can I interrupt you a second? So we're seeing Universal Traffic Engine Week 2. Is that what we're supposed to be seeing?
Good God.
So
No.
that would be a no then. Okay.
Okay, hell with this. Screen sharing is off. What the hell?
It's your computer, man.
Okay, whatever. It's share my screen and that's what's on my screen.
Is it on a separate monitor?
No, there's only one monitor.
Okay, that helps.
All right, let's do desktop and
share
let's try
full
that.
Screen. Right.
Again, here we go into the hole.
Yep, the Hall of Mirrors. And then here we go, Case Study 1 Hybrid Conversion. That's what I want to see. There we go. Now we're full screen too. There we go. That wasn't too hard.
Fantastic. I love this tool. It is so awesome and easy to use, and there's no weird maze of gotchas to get through. So
none whatsoever.
Yeah. So okay. So this was what I would call a very, very well managed set of campaigns. A very well managed account. In fact, by far, out of the 190 something Google accounts that I looked at last year, by far the best managed out of all of them. I mean, the previous manager had pretty much every book he'd studied with the best of the best. He was a student of ours more than once, and so it was a really well built, really in terms of what kind of the conventional by the book wisdom is. It was a really well done job of running the thing. Again, he had very tight and focused ad groups. In a lot of cases, he had, which I would always prefer, to have a single keyword in an ad group all by itself with an exact match. He had that on all of the highest volume keywords. And they'd actually been running ad testing continuously for more than 7 months. Now, they had stopped some of the ads as losers in the ad tests by the book, but in my opinion, kind of prematurely and without doing a full analysis. But in fact, the actual reason why he hired us wasn't thinking that we could do a better job, just thinking that we could maintain it, and it was really more a matter of they wanted to reclaim some of their time to work on other things, because not everybody enjoys running AdWords as much as I do. And, well, if you run it by the book, it does, it is kind of boring if that's all you're going to do. You have to do it by the book to get it to a certain state, but at a certain point, you really want to, recognize that going by the book only gets you as far as the book goes, and then sometimes there are opportunities beyond that. And this case study is a great example of a number of opportunities beyond sort of by the book management that once you see what you can do, it's not that hard for anybody to understand what we're doing and why it works. But the big goal, when if you can do anything, we'd like to get more conversions. Growth was a higher priority than optimizing for the cost per conversion. I was given a maximum cost per conversion to hit, but that wasn't something I needed to hit on a keyword by keyword basis or an ad by ad basis. It was actually a number that they wanted to hit for the account overall. So essentially they budgeted a certain amount per conversion up front that they were willing to pay, but get as many conversions as you can as long as you keep it within those numbers. Well, but the thing is, we had all of these, all of this stuff that was really well done by the book. So we had to look into different areas for opportunity. And if you want to get more conversions, I mean, the book kind of has two stories, right? So it's you can, if you want to get more conversions, you can either, increase the number of impressions by adding keywords, which is what Google always tries to get you to do. And, well, that's what, Google will try and get you to stick, 93 new keywords, most of which aren't even remotely close to relevant, all into one big ad group, or maybe a few ad groups. But they'll try and do all kinds of crazy stuff too. But the book kind of says, well, you add more keywords so that you can get more impressions. Or you can, get the same conversion rate by getting more clicks, right? So you get more impressions with the same click-through rate. You get a higher click-through rate by ad testing, and you've got more clicks. And if you can keep the conversion rate the same, you've got more conversions. Or you can, try to get a higher conversion rate by sort of cherry-picking the keywords and working on ad testing to try and keep the same number of clicks. Right? There are a lot of different ways for the math to work. There are a few factors in the equation, and you can, make the right ones bigger and the right ones smaller, and really in whatever order. One of the things that a lot of the books, though, tell you to do is to lower the cost per click. So if the book that you've got, the book that you're working in, tells you to worry about the cost per click, stop reading that book, because that isn't the answer. The cost per click is really incidental to the numbers that you need to manage by. That doesn't mean that you won't lower bids when you're bidding too high, and you won't raise bids when you're not bidding enough, but you're not trying to manage the cost per click unless your only business objective is to get clicks.
Well, yeah, and in fact, Dan, there are a couple of different marketing avenues. Kind of the analogies, right? One would be, oh, well, my ranking for such and such keyword, right? That would be equivalent to cost per click. Or how many minutes on drive time radio I appeared on, right? Those are not business objectives. Real business objectives, whether the leads you got from that actually converted to money, right?
Yeah, and there are certainly means to an end, but the thing about cost per click management is there are actually agencies out there that believe in that and that push that and sell that, and really, I mean, I can understand that if that's marketing fodder and you think your customers are too dumb to understand the truth, but if you're actually managing that way, and we've come in and looked at stuff that's clearly been managed to reduce the cost per click, and the performance suffers horribly. Not necessarily that you're going to lose your shirt, but you're losing opportunity in a big way. So to me, the way ultimately that you have to approach getting more conversions is, yeah, you're going to get more impressions, right? There are going to be keywords you might not be targeting that you can expand to. That's great. But ultimately, there's going to be a certain number of search impressions that are available that you've got any chance of converting on, where you're any kind of relevant. And what you really need to do is optimize to get more conversions per impression. And so when we've got a client like this that's told us, hey, well, yes, there's a limit on cost per conversion, but within, as long as you can stay within that, get us as many as you can. I like that because it lets us do things in a hyper-aggressive way. But even if you're not going to be hyper-aggressive, the process I'm going to show you here in a second is absolutely can be used for anybody, but it does require you to actually have managed by the book for a little while to get the most out of it in the shortest amount of time. And I actually had a couple of other case studies here where we had to move people sort of more to a by the book approach. But what's the end game of that? 3 months in, we've got them restructured and we've done the other optimizations. This is the one that we're going to go to next. In this case, we happen to be able to jump a little bit farther ahead, well, because of the state that the account was in. But the funny thing is, the people that least think they need our help are the people that, in a lot of cases, can get the most out of bringing somebody in to help them do it beyond what's in the book. But again, so you can't make people search. So Facebook, you can do other things. Facebook, email, everything that you do to promote your brand is going to increase the volume of branded search over time. In fact, I've seen people really hurt their business by shutting off Facebook campaigns that they thought were floating around break even, but they were actually driving a lot of branded search. There are going to be seasonal ups and downs, but really there is absolutely no way for an AdWords advertiser to get more people to type their top converting search queries into the search box. You can't change the search volume, and because that's the only number in the equation that basically can't vary. Or at least that it's a variable that we can't really influence. That's the one that we most of the time try to optimize around. So when I get to what the results are, I'll show you the overall results in terms of ROI, but I'm also going to express those in terms of the number of search impressions per conversion, or for a retailer, it'd be number of search impressions per dollar of profit that you make, or the dollar of revenue if you don't have a good way to actually figure out what your profit is on a granular level. So here's what we did. So, and you can do this too. So every ad group that you have that has had more than one ad testing in it, you can open up the date range wide enough to actually look at all of the ads that were running in that period of time, and you can add a segment for the day of the week. This is very easy to do, and in fact there are a number of different segments that you really should be looking at on a number of your different reports. So if you've never been in this segment menu and you have been running an AdWords account, prepare to be amazed, dazzled, and excited when you realize what else you can do here. So in this case, we went into the segment menu, went under the time submenu, and selected day of the week. You can also do this to look at keyword and placement, and so that'll show you when you have a bunch of different, so if you've got 20 different keywords in an ad group, or if you, then you can actually run the keyword and placement segment against your ads and see which ad is actually performing best against each of those keywords. And the differences will shock you and make you realize that you shouldn't have 20 keywords in an ad group except under very specific circumstances. Most of the time you're going to see that one ad is working better for one keyword, the other ad is working better for another keyword, and those things really should be split up. But looking at this thing based on the day of the week, the variances between the different ads' performances on different days of the week will shock you. So in this case, we had, in every ad group, we had either 2 or 4 ads that had been running and had significant data volume. So what we did was we went through with this day of the week segment and looked for the best ad or 2 ads, and sometimes it was actually 3 ads that looked like they were still performing, at least potentially could be our best ad for that day of the week, and just looked for the best number for performance. Now, if you don't have any conversion measurement, fix that. But in the meantime, you can actually manage to whichever one gets the best click-through rate on a given day of the week. If you're trying to manage to maximize your ROI, then what you're really after is which ad had the best return on ad spend number for a given day of the week, or to put it in terms of what you can actually show in the AdWords reporting columns, conversion value divided by cost, or best cost per conversion, right? It could be anything. So in this case, we might have actually operated differently if we were trying to optimize based on the cost per conversion. But because they were actually asking us to optimize, essentially, get us as many conversions as you can, the only way I can do that, once I've expanded to all the available keywords that we can bid, is to increase the number of conversions per search impression. So the way I did the math on this was to actually figure out which ad for any given day of the week got the most conversions per search impression. And so what we did then was we added labels to each of the ads in the ad group with the day that they might be a candidate for. So we looked at Sunday, and we looked at each ad, and then any of the ads that looked like they still had a chance, statistically speaking, and thank you, Leslie, for teaching me more math and how to do the weird can I say ass on weirdo math on this particular case, to figure out which ones were actually statistically likely to come up with the most conversions per impression on any given Sunday or on any given Wednesday. But once we got through all of that math, we had on any given day of the week, we had anywhere from 2 to 3 different ads running, and over the course of then testing, we were able to boil that down, and you can see the difference in performance. So I deliberately hid the performance chart here behind the menu.
I was going to say about that. We can't see it.
See, so the blue line is conversions going up, and the orange line is the cost per conversion going down. So we were actually below their target cost per conversion when we started, and we've actually been able to bring that down some. Kind of funny, because that's the one number that I wasn't really being asked to bring down any. It was just, it's kind of been inevitable that the cost was going to go down as we continued to perform. At a certain point, Google won't let you waste any more of your money than you have to. So this is the first thing that we did. We did this analysis, and you can run this report in your AdWords account right now. Now the key is, this is only something that you can do effectively with a significant amount of data. The sample size here is actually much smaller than the sample size that we used to perform the analysis. But the funny thing is that they actually thought that that Tuesdays and Wednesdays early on, before we started, were their worst days of the week. As it turns out, those are actually their best days of the week, as long as you run the right ads on those days. And Saturdays and Sundays were a huge problem for them, just because of low click-through rates, but in fact, by flipping it around and getting the right ads running on the right days, the changes in performance are pretty substantial. The reason why this works is, if you think about it, I think everybody understands the theory of why an ad split test works, right? If I run this ad versus that ad, and I run them both 7 days a week, and I run that for long enough, one of them is going to beat the other statistically speaking, and that one's going to perform better. So you can lock that in as your control. But by using the segment, the day of week segment in your reports, you can actually treat each day of the week as if it is its own ad group for testing purposes. And so what we do is we treat each day of the week as a different container. Now, I don't even want to get down into the rabbit hole of how that looks at different times of day or different days of the week with different times of the day and all that kind of stuff. I mean, if you had the volume of data that Amazon had, I'm pretty sure I could get Amazon a 20% ROI boost in the first month, just like I more or less claim to be able to do for anybody that's actually spending money on AdWords.
I'll just email Jeff about that and see.
Well, so far I haven't had any luck in getting in to have any contacts in Amazon. I think it'd be a nice account if they could just give us 10% of their AdWords spend.
That'd be okay.
I mean, I might even take a couple of points off for them.
Yeah, 8% would be good. Sure.
8.5 maybe, but sure, volume discounts, no problem. I don't know how much they spend, but you can take this as far as you want to, but the simple, easy, obvious, and pretty much if you've been spending $5,000 to $10,000 a month and you've been consistently running things by the book, and that's a minimum. Obviously, if you've been spending more, you can go faster. But if you've been consistently running things by the book for 3 or 4 months, then at least your highest volume ad group should have enough data to start doing this kind of stuff in it. There will at least be some ads that you can say, I don't want to run that ad on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and you can turn that ad off on those days. Now, we run a script that does that automatically for us, and the next version of that script will actually do some of this statistical math for us so that I don't have to do it all the time. But you can literally do it by hand. I mean, it's a 2-minute job. So if you've been going and managing your ads anywhere, just staring at the reports every day, spending a couple minutes to turn off a few ads in a few ad groups, and it can improve your performance by this much is well worth doing. The thing is, you're never going to know exactly what's the best wording. One of the second case study that I wanted to get to today, we actually literally didn't change any of the ads other than just trying different thesaurus variations of different words against different days of the week, and that one we actually got just absurdly good ROI on it. I mean, we're talking about 57% more conversions and getting their cost per conversion down by 8% over about 3 months of doing that. And this is an account where we're really only spending about $8,000 to $10,000 a month. But again, depending on whether you've been running things by the book, there's a lot that you can do with day-of-week ad rotation and testing. So let your imagination run wild, and if you don't think it's worth actually pursuing and doing all the math and squinting at all those reports, here are the results. So that the chart on the top is our conversions and our cost per conversion month by month, and you can see that we actually managed to get it all the way up to our target number of $50 in February. But this is the number of conversions month by month and the cost per conversion. March is kind of when we were able to conclude a lot of these day-of-the-week tests, and sort of, so we actually concluded them late in February, and we're able to turn this up into more ad groups, but the change is ridiculous. We're literally more than double the number of conversions over December, and the cost is down by nearly 10%. And that's what doing this kind of math and doing this kind of work in your accounts, again, right? I mean, this is an account that was being managed perfectly by the book. This account, was being managed better than any agency that these guys could afford to hire at the amount that they were spending. Well, I guess until I guess there was one. But
yeah.
Right. I don't want to brag. I was just trying to point out that he's doing a good job. But this is what you can do, and day of the week isn't the only thing, and looking at it in terms of the ads isn't the only thing that you can do. But you can look at the account overall, and so the bottom chart actually shows the account overall. So the cost per conversion actually overall dropped from month to month to month to month, and And the number of conversions that we've been able to get actually increased from month to month to month to month to month. And actually in April, I mean, just with the last concluded set of ad tests, which ran through April 5th, so around about April 10th, we were able to roll in another set. And we've actually doubled the number of search impressions that actually now have day of the week ad rotation. And so the ad groups that have day of week rotation on them now were roughly 28% of their conversions when we started on this project. They are now 46%, and that's going to, I think, most likely be over 50%. So more than half of their conversions will be coming from ad groups where we're running day of week rotation. And in those ad groups, that's where we've more than doubled the number of conversions. Sometimes it's 3 times the number of conversions at at literally a lower cost per conversion to do the job. So now, month to month, overall, you're talking about literally more than double. But here's the fun number, the number that really means the most to me, and that's the number of impressions per conversion. And so you might think of it as conversions per search, but that ends up being a very tiny fraction, right? So you get 1 conversion per however many searches, right? So 1 conversion in December for every 159 times someone searched. We actually added a bunch more keywords and expanded the number of impressions a bit in January, but we were still able to get that down to 139.
Should we be seeing a slide for this, Dan?
I don't think we actually have that slide.
Okay, all right, that's fine. Yeah,
I'm in the wrong version of the presentation, and switching will switching process deadly here. But yeah, but in December, 159 searches to make 1 impression. In January, 139. In February, 127. In March, 121. And so now that we've actually got more of these in rotation, I think one more round, another couple of months, we can literally have that down to 1 conversion per 100 searches.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not a 1% conversion rate from clicks. That's a 1% of every person that searched for a keyword that we're targeting ends up being a conversion.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love these guys. I love the willingness to be aggressive with it, and the fact that they were willing to let us do all this hokey stuff that I said, because when I showed them the math on what the variances were, I mean, right, we actually, the first time we met with him, I told him, I called this shot. Not what we're going to be doing in April, but certainly as far as the results that we were able to get to in March. I said we're going to get 20% more ROI in the first month. We did, and continue to go on. And why could we do that? Because you can do this analysis right now in your own account, even if you don't know how to actually do the rotation or you don't want to deal with it. You can do the math. All you have to do is go in and look and see, are there big differences in the numbers just between these 2 ads? The difference in conversion rate from ad number 1 on a Sunday at 8% to ad number 2 on a Sunday below 6%. And on a Thursday, ad number 2 almost 11% conversion, ad number 1 8%. And the numbers on Saturday and Sunday are so much better in favor. One of the second ad that I literally I'm sorry, on Saturday is just it's absolutely insane. But when you see these big variances, swings of 20, 30, 40% or more in performance between different days of the week, between different ads that you've been running that you might have thought were equally good. And in fact, we actually to make Tuesday and Wednesday profitable, we resurrected an ad that they had removed as a loser because by the book it was. But when we actually did this day of week analysis, it was an ad that when we turned it back on, and we've actually been able to test our way through iteration to a version that's quite a bit better than the one that we started with. But the first week was an 8% bump in ROI.
Well, I mean, part of the problem here may be that people are not quite getting the difference between 8% and 11% is not actually 3%.
No.
Yeah.
Nearly 30%.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the whole percentages of percentages is something we talked about this in a prior hangout.
Yeah, it's the difference between 8 and 11, not the difference in percentage-wise, right? The percentage increase to get you from 8 to 11, not the number of points between 8 and 11.
Right. Yeah. Because actually, a 3% increase over 8 is actually a 37.5% increase in your business. And that's
3 percentage point increase, yes.
Yes, per 3 percentage point increase over 8 percentage points is actually a 37.5% increase. It's one of the mind, human mind is not designed to work with percentages of percentages. We look at 8 and 11, we go, oh, that's 3. And it's like, okay, well, 3% is great. So if I'm making 10,000 now, that means I make 13,000. No,
right, yeah, so,
1,000, 3,000. No, that's not right.
Like super, sort of like the fast food method of figuring out if you have enough variance to make it worth talking about this stuff and analyzing it and looking at it. Mm-hmm. That is, if you go into this report and in fact, I mean, just go look at your whole campaign and see what the variances are between day of week performance. Right. If you see more than 4 different first digits before the decimal point, so in this case we've got a 5, which means we can imply a 6, a 7, an 8, a 9, a 10. Mm-hmm. Right? If you see more than 3, you've got enough variance there. And if the 3 different numbers are 1, 2, and 3, oh my gosh, you've got one opportunity to perform better just on conversion, right? I mean, conversion testing, other kinds of stuff might help you there. But that much variance, that's actually a huge percentage difference in the size of your business. I mean, we literally, just the AdWords channel, but doubled the number of conversions and reduced the cost to do it with this account. Not just almost all of that, more than all of that, comes from applying this testing methodology in what, in another week will be a total of 8 ad groups. Now, it's not actually that unusual to have your 8 top keywords be responsible for the vast majority of your conversions. And so, we're a little bit behind the curve in terms of stomping out the long tail, but in fact, all of the long tail stuff that we manage as a group collectively is at least meeting their performance target. If they ever decide to get more serious about we need to reduce that cost per conversion, some of that long tail stuff is going to drop off. But we're not going to drop off these high volume keywords because right now you see the average position on this is 1.0, 1.0, 1.0, 1.0, 1.0, 1.0. We always buy the top of every damn search, every chance we get in basically all of the keywords. Now again, right, so the long tail stuff, we might have to back off of that if they ever wanted to focus on improving the cost per conversion. But there's really no reason why people don't do this other than that it's really freaking hard and it's really freaking tricky, and you can very easily make mistakes just because you don't understand the concept of statistical significance and the probability that this one is actually better than that one. Right? If you've got 4 conversions on this day and 2 conversions on that day and you had the same number of clicks, you really know almost nothing.
Yep.
About what to like. Now, if you bet on the one that had 4 over the one that had 2, and you did that consistently all through your account, you can still bet that your overall performance is going to improve at least a little bit. But if you call the test prematurely, you're going to end up missing out on a lot of opportunities where one of them is actually significantly better in the long run, and you just ended your test too soon.
Dan, we've talked about. I mean, I think there's 2 really significant things here in this presentation. So one is let's treat this one secondly. Percentage of percentage and what's a significant number, to focus on. So that's one thing. Let me get to that in a minute. But the other one, I think that the headliner here in terms of this presentation is day of week, and we've talked about this before, at least internally. It's like have you ever in 2.5, 3 decades, whatever it is, found a situation where day of week was not, for AdWords, was not something that a business owner should actually go test, focus on, and optimize? Have you ever seen an account where it's true that day of week didn't matter?
Well, I've certainly seen accounts, and I'm managing accounts where there's not a whole heck of a lot we can do about it because we have a low volume of data, right? We took it over,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
right, this is the first time
Of course.
anybody ever ran an ad test, things like that. But it's always a factor. There are always big variances between days of the week. And one of the things, we talk about going by the book. The best book on AdWords for professional AdWords managers. I don't even want to mention the name because I like him, and he did a really good job and pretty heroic service to actually go through and write this giant freaking book. How many pages is it? 650 something pages long. That's a lot of work. Okay. But AdWords is big and complicated. But you know what? When you go in that book and look at day-of-week variations, it doesn't even mention analyzing ads by day of week, which I've been doing that since. I used to have to do it the old-fashioned way by forcing data in the URL into analytics so that I could do the analysis because Google didn't have cool day-of-week segment reports against our ads and stuff like that like they do now. But it's since 2004 when I started doing this, it's always in every account paid off eventually to do it. This one it took us 3 or 4 months really of actively testing with day of week rotation in to get it boiled down. But we've still got at least a couple of more months or notches of uptick on that graph here before we have to say, we're going to have to look at the next dimension, right? We still haven't done any of this stuff to the same level with geography against ad variations, and we still haven't. And by the way, a lot of that will involve us going back and mining the data that we've accumulated to figure out so that we can have different ads running in different geographies on different days of the week, something like that. There's so much farther that you can go with this, but it is always a factor. But if you go by the book, well, the advice that they tell you is, well, if you're not doing as well on Saturday, lower your bid. If you're not doing as well on Sunday, lower your bid. Well, never mind that your conversion rate, even though Google lies and tells you otherwise, your conversion rate is likely to be worse as you move down the page, and the value of the conversions is likely to be worse as you move down the page. And generally speaking, lowering your bid isn't a good solution for why you're not performing well. That's why I hate all of the automated bid management things that just jack bids up and down hyperactively. But the fact is that if you look at your competition, no matter what market you're in, they're not doing this.
Right.
And the fact is, these folks used to get ridiculously low conversion numbers on Saturdays and Sundays, and pretty weak conversion numbers on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. But in fact, Tuesdays and Wednesdays are now their best days, and Saturdays and Sundays are basically equal to any day of the week in terms of performance. The only difference is that there's less search volume. The actual financial performance that we get per search impression is our worst day is 134 searches to get a conversion, and our best day is 99. And so there's still a ton of variance, right? So, there are some days of the week that aren't as good as others. But gosh, before you back down and just say, well, let's lower our bids because we're not doing well on Saturday, take a look at this, because you might have an ad that's running now that if you got rid of, got the other ones off on Saturday, you'd be winning. Or you might have an ad that you shut down 6 months ago because it was a loser in your click-through rate split test. And in fact, it was actually converting fantastic on Saturday. You just don't know until you do the math, and of course, not everybody feels like doing the math. So, for people that want to have us do the math, Leslie, I believe that they can actually get in touch with us and do that, right?
Absolutely. And in fact, I think the right way to do that is to mail. Was it Dan plus PPC Apps? Yep, it sure is. Right there on the screen.
Yeah, and so literally, we do a lot of case studies with a lot of clients. We do a lot of case studies with students in the courses that we do. We're doing the Universal Traffic Engine training right now. I'm lining up. I think we're going to end up doing at least a dozen case studies where we work with people and kind of show them the math on their campaigns and how they want to fix it. And then we have them go off and run off and do what we said. But we also, we're happy to do this kind of stuff with people with AdWords, assuming that you actually have enough budget that there's at least a plausible reason that we'd be able to increase your ROI. Because this one, even accounting for our fees, the the percentage of spend that we take to manage this account, there's a pretty substantial increase in ROI for them. I think the math that we came up with was 47% more ROI on what they were spending on AdWords, including management fee, and that's not even accounting for the labor cost of the person that was running it before. But obviously, it's not going to be the case every time. And so, what we're doing, you send me an email, let me know, what you're working on, let me know where your website is, let me know what you're spending, or what your budget is if it's something new. We're looking for a minimum of $5,000 a month spend. Over about $100,000, I might talk to you about us training someone on your team to do this stuff instead of us doing it, on a permanent basis. But my goal from there, we want to get you to share data. We'll do an analysis. We'll schedule an appointment to go over it. My goal there is to find what we call the first 20%, because what we'd like to try to get to is a 20% ROI increase. Now, sometimes we think we can do that in 30 days. Sometimes we think that'll take us 60 days. Sometimes we may tell you that it's going to take as much as 90 days because we're having to start things that weren't being done before. And so there isn't as much data for us to get to. But if my goal is to find that first 20%, and assuming that I can find that, which so far hasn't been a problem, we'll be able to go through, and I'll talk through it with you, and I'll show you exactly what we would do, kind of what we do. So if you don't want to hire me to do it, you at least have a roadmap to be able to do it. So you understand what the things you're going to need to figure out how to do and the things you're going to need to work on and hope that you get right. But yeah, it is. I mean, of course, Leslie, I hate to be just this blunt about it, but it's very likely that if I can find that much performance improvement by spending about 15 to 20 minutes looking at your account before I talk to you, there's a pretty good chance that there's a lot more there, and I probably am going to recommend that you hire me.
Oh yeah, well, why wouldn't you? And so I guess that's the thing. It's on that phone call. I mean, it's if Dan says, "Wow, you're doing everything incredibly right," well, then maybe we should issue you a certificate or something.
Well, no, I mean, look, I mean, this again, this is one where literally, absolutely the best managed AdWords account I've looked at in a long time. But still, there was that much more room to grow just by okay. You've done it by the book, so let's close the book and start looking for what are the opportunities that don't fit in the book. Sometimes the opportunities are in day-of-week ad testing and ad rotation. Sometimes that's not the best opportunity.
Well, so Dan, what you said was yes. What Leslie said was right. And so Keith asked, how many ads do you recommend per ad group? I know the answer to this, assuming decent volumes of traffic.
Okay, well, at least one. Because Google won't let you run ads unless you have ads. But I mean, really, I want to see at least 2 running. Okay, so at least a control ad that is my current best performing ad, and a second ad that I'm testing against that to try and beat it. Now, when you've got a control that's working really well, and kind of the second case study, and maybe we'll get to it, I don't know, in a week or a couple weeks. But the second case study is one where the performance was really good. We really couldn't make changes in terms of I'm going to take your control ad and I'm going to throw another ad against it. I wasn't going to spend 50% of my ad impressions on an unproven test ad. So what we did was we made and sometimes I've made as many as 9 or 10 copies of my control ad under really high volume conditions, and then I have my test ad running. And so what you end up with is that 90% of the impressions go to the test to the control, and 10% go to the test. If you run four copies of your control and 1 test ad, then 20% of your impressions are going to test. Mm-hmm. And so it's a slower way to test, but it's a safer way to test if you've got ROI that you have to protect. So it's a little bit complicated, but at least 2. I mean, you should always be testing, and well, not always, right? I mean, sometimes you're going to have concluded an ad test, and you've got a control that is just like taken over, and you're going to let that run for a while. And so what we typically do there is we make 2 copies of that one and let that run for a couple of weeks. So it's really 2 ads, but they're both identical, and that's just a validation test to prove that that's actually gonna work before we decide that that's really the control. So I like to run a split test, and I like to run a validation test to prove that I like the result most of the time before we move on to more testing. But that's really in the higher volume containers you want to be that careful, and the lower volume stuff There's much less at risk if you roll the dice and move on to your next test. And there's a whole lot at risk if you try to test too slowly, because you can run the risk that you will never, ever, ever reach a conclusion on your ad test.
Yeah. Steve asked an interesting question, and I have my own opinions about this. I mean, there's a psychology question here, but have you identified any factors that contribute to why ads perform better on one day versus another? It seems strange that ads can vary so much from day to day, and that's so. Let me say a couple things about that, Steve. And I'd love to hear Dan discuss this, but just bear in mind that depending upon when people are looking at your ads, so when they're searching, whether they're at work, whether they're after at work during the evening, or maybe even like lunch hour as opposed to at work, right? Or on the weekend.
I mean,
the psychology is different.
Yeah, well, so Leslie, if you can make me not the presenter so that I'm not always on the screen while you're talking. I can't do that. You have to do that because Hangouts. But so a lot, and this applies to day-of-week variations of all kinds. So I mean, one of the first times I really saw day-of-week variations applied in a scientific way was on a buy button test on a shopping cart, where add to cart and buy now were the two variations that were tested, and the test had been running for weeks and they hadn't been gotten to a conclusion, and then some stat geek guy that
we both know. Yes? Dan? Dan? Michelle? Really?
On a Wednesday, a lot of the people that were searching were at their office, in their cubicle, looking over their shoulder, hoping nobody would notice that they were shopping. And so Buy Now was actually working better for them. On Saturday and Sunday, they were sitting around, with a cup of coffee in their pajamas, maybe together, looking at the products and browsing and searching a lot of products. And so add to cart actually worked better. And in fact, that the big thing that made that variation a winner on the weekends was they actually ended up with higher average transaction sizes and more items in the order. But yeah, so there are a lot of different things, and sometimes there are going to be the time of day effects will sometimes be stronger than day of week effects. I mean, this one is in this case study the time of day effects weren't as strong as the day of week effects. The variance wasn't as great, and so that's why we focused in on day of week effects. But you can also really find the same kind of stuff in time of day. Typically, that's easier to manage by having a different campaign for the different time of day blocks, and then running different ads in those that way. But there are a lot of ways to slice and dice it. But one of the toughest ones to do, and one of the reasons why we wrote a script, was to actually make the ad rotation automated based on us just identifying it and labeling it up in the account, so that somebody doesn't have to go in there and do it by hand every day.
Huh.
And a lot of the higher end tools will let you construct all kinds of elaborate, day parting and this ad turned off and that kind of stuff. And you look at Acquisio and stuff like that. You can write rules, to do that, but it's a lot easier to just do, kind of the simple thing. For us, it was, just a fairly simple script to turn the ads on and off, and the more advanced script is, the next version, which actually includes the testing math, so that we don't have to, I don't have to use Excel anymore, because Excel is bad for me.
Yeah, no, I get that. So Jan is asking, he or she, unisex name kind of like mine. Can we start at top, add to cart, and buy now button test? Well, I think we may have just answered that. So that may have been crossing in the ether there. But so part of the thing is a lot about testing is you don't know the answer. You can't prove the answer, and so you shouldn't try to wrap your mind around it.
Run the experiment and then analyze the data. There's so many medical discoveries nowadays that are coming out of meta-analyses of other people's studies where they're finding things that they weren't looking for. And you can run an ad test, a split test, and if you've been doing them for 6 months, 3 months, even a couple months, I'm willing to bet you that there's that data already there in your account that we or you could use to do this analysis. It's just right. I mean, you ran the test, and this one got a better click-through rate, and the conversion rate was about the same, and so this one's the winner. And that's better than nothing, right? At least running, the one that works best again across all 7 days, better than the other one does on an average across all 7 days. That's better than not doing testing at all. Just understand that most of the ROI in your testing is probably actually going to come from this kind of dimensional analysis of the test results, and not from just the, by the book. Well, that one got a better click-through rate, or that one got a better conversion rate, so that one's the winner. You got to look at all the math, figure out how you can do all the math, and then look at it across the dimensions to have the big variation.
Yeah, and that's all true. I would say that one of the things to focus on, maybe for Jan's question, is that maybe be okay with what as opposed to why. And what I mean by that is, what works, and don't be so obsessive about why it worked.
I've given up trying to understand why one ad works better than one other in any context. I mean, right? I mean, we develop a hypothesis, about the next ad, right? So maybe people who see this word or we implant this idea are more likely to convert better. So we run the test, but the test might tell us no, there's no difference there. But the test might tell us something else that we don't know. And so every time you have a losing test, don't lose the value that's in the test result, the test data.
Yeah, and yeah, absolutely, because you can get too crazy. I mean, because we, from a standpoint of like copywriting and marketing in general, we know the things that the elements we want to go into the message. Greed, fear, logic, for example. I mean, we have a structure to it, but the reality is that we have some notion about why that works. But in some cases, when you get all the way down to brass tacks, you're talking about short headline, limited amount of text, and a link to a page. You're at the point where you just have to measure what happens and just go with it. And sometimes you can get a glimmer of why, but don't focus on the why. Don't try to overthink it. Instead, actually just do more testing.
Yeah, and the thing is, I mean, there are so many things that you might hear, like, how many people think an orange buy button is magically better, right? I mean, because
the Belcher button, right? Why is it better, right? Yeah.
Well, I mean, because it won that test on that day with that audience, with that product, and that everything else. I mean, come on, that doesn't mean it's going to work better for you. But the same thing. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that people kind of do on principle that you really, run the test. For retailers, I've run ads where browse works better than shop. I've also run where shop works better than browse. I've run ads where search from 500 different widgets works better than browse, and oh, by the way, those can all be all over the place on different days of the week. They can all be all over the place in different geographies. You don't know what's going to happen, and so much of what we do on principle is there really isn't a principle there. It's just a precedent, right? And
Mike Filsaime made that clear in one of his mastermind meetings where I was attending. It's like, yeah, this is a test result, but you know what? It's just like one test, and don't depend on that. The reality is, those things vary so widely that you can't just like take this like, oh, this is the right way to do things. It's just
I mean, hey, a test that an ad that worked well for somebody else in a similar context is more likely, is likely to be better than, say, a random jumbled collection of words that you just picked out of the dictionary by throwing darts. But is it going to be better than the best ad that you can do? Is it going to be better than your first effort based on actually doing that, the avatar exercise that we do to try and identify who's that ideal customer and how do we go grab them through the search box and pull them in? I would say I'd bet on somebody that's actually done their homework before they cut wood, beating somebody that is just copying what somebody else did, and that includes copying the competitor's ads. I mean, it's kind of fun to copy the competitor's ads because then once you beat them, then you actually know that your click-through rate and your conversion on stuff is actually better than theirs, most likely. Or certainly, at least, it is better for you than their ad could deliver. But Anyway, I don't know. Have we beaten the horse dead? Is it
I don't know.
dead and we're still beating it, or should
Michelle,
we continue?
I mean, Michelle, you actually do, what Dan does in AdWords, of course. Well, you help with that too, but you do over in Facebook. And so, you got anything to add to this? We kind of didn't touch on. And by the way, would you unmute so we could hear you talk?
That would be helpful, wouldn't it?
Because I can't read lips that well.
Well, you know. Well, I think that really it applies over in Facebook, and in fact, I was telling Dan this morning I'm doing some of my first day parting tests in Facebook because of the age of the audience. They aren't expected to be at the desktop during normal business hours. They're only expected to kind of be on the computer when it's not normal business hours, and so because of the age of the group, and so because they should be in school. And so we are testing now to see if we can compress our ads into the time frame outside of school hours to get more impressions for the same budget.
And I'm waiting to see if there's a big difference between which ads do better in the morning and which ads do better in the evening.
Exactly. And then
I was just wondering, as a bonus, if you would detect truancy this way.
Well, since we can't actually go quite to that level, I think Facebook.
You should run like a truant remarketing campaign during school hours that like shows them ads that say "Go to school."
Well, and what I can actually tell you is I do believe that, and I know that we know that Facebook knows a lot of stuff. The thing that I've seen on these ads is that early in the morning, a huge portion of my spend is eaten up. So I think that Facebook already knows where this expected group is and what time of day, because I'll use 2/3 of my budget before the school hour, and then it does slow down throughout the day, and then it goes again. But I've actually
based on who you're targeting,
collected out.
Facebook's big data does know that.
Yeah, they know, and so that's pretty interesting. But I don't know that I have anything more to add to that other than test. And I had someone ask in the Skype group, well, will I know if this works? Yep, just as soon as you hit go and test it. So, test it.
Yeah, there's I think we touched both. There's a really good question here, and this is something we should really probably cover next week, kind of, presage that. So Rainer asks, I have organic search with page 1 rankings for my keyword term, plus running AdWords for that keyword for my client. My keyword, I think it's for the same site. Conversions are counted when the thank you page is shown after submission. That's good. You want to count conversions. Conversion code is on the thank you page. Can Google see the difference between an AdWords conversion and an organic search conversion? Well, actually, It's not about Google seeing it. It's about you seeing it. And that's assuming that you've actually tagged things appropriately, so that you're using Google Analytics properly.
Or if you're using the AdWords conversion pixel, the conversion tracking code is not as simple as a pixel anymore, because it's not the good old days anymore. But yeah, I mean they can tell where it came from. That there are going to be some conversions that came from AdWords or from organic search that you can't account for back to the source, just because of the nature of the growing measurement problem that we at marketers have to deal with. But but certainly Google Analytics, Google AdWords conversion tracking, unless you've done something to break it, yes, it can tell the difference.
Yeah, and what I added in a private message back to him, not very private, I'm going to say it now. So the other thing is you can look within, and this is something we need to talk about. We may schedule this for next week, as I just said, is that what you will find is in the searcher lifecycle or the prospect lifecycle, is that they touch you various times before the actual conversion in general, right? It's very rare that there's the one and done. And so by focusing on the last click, which is the standard in Google Analytics or any tracking platform, it's like, okay, so this person hit my site from this source and converted. Woohoo! That marketing channel's working. Yeah, well, we haven't seen all of the other impressions, all of the other touches and engagements that had happened before that. And so, I mean, the best way to think about this, really, is to go to an offline analogy. I think is the way to think about this. It's like you're driving down the highway and you saw 7 billboards that had Nike swooshes on them, and you didn't see any Reebok ads. And so when you walk into a store and the salesperson, as they're trained to do, takes you by surprise and asks you what kind of shoes are you interested in, you immediately think Nike. Right, and this actually does operate. In fact, there's a really good experiment by Darren Brown in the UK where he tricked advertising executives. So should you be able to trick advertising executives, by subliminally displaying advertising at them? Well, apparently it works great.
Sure works on Facebook.
It works everywhere. It's because of the way that our brain is wired. The things that we see more often are the things that we're more comfortable with seeing more of.
Well, it's the same reason why when you have, for retailers, if they have a product on a search result in the shopping box and we can also get a search ad next to it, then those both perform better. In fact, what we've been finding out is that through testing is that the ad that works best when it's next to your product in a search box is often different than the ad that works best when you don't. So that's a whole other layer of complexity we're trying to figure out how to grapple with automating. But yeah, I mean, it's the fact is, if you go into your analytics and if you go all the way down to the conversion section and go all the way down to the top conversion paths report, when you see how many of those the last thing in the path is direct, those are all conversions that you wouldn't account for as a conversion back to the channel that started that series of impressions and searches and clicks and all that kind of stuff. You would just see it in that big box in your analytics that says direct conversions. So you have to unpack that. I mean, we have AdWords accounts where they're really high ticket items. It's something where it takes people a lot of time to make a decision on it. The conversion window of even 30 days isn't good enough for us to do a good and accurate job. In fact, if we go and expand that to a 90-day window, we actually make different decisions on which ads we'd want to run, which keywords we want to run against. And so if we actually want to sell more stuff, we have to account for that stuff. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to do a good job. If we're just doing it based on the conversion tracking pixel, we would be doing a terrible job for these guys. And then, obviously with, a 90-day window to get to close, managing it is slower, but you have to manage the world the way it is. You can't try and force things into a 1-week testing cycle if that's not how long it takes to actually figure out what converted.
Indeed. That's interesting. And so, go ahead.
Can I throw something in there? And I think too, because I've been looking at the conversion paths and stuff, and looking at source, and just kind of really wrapping my head around some of this data. It's not what you think either, right? You assume maybe that if they found me because we paid, and then they're just going to come back. Well, sometimes they find you organically and they remember your name, and then they come back and click on your paid ad for branding, or they pick on your paid ad for a brand name or something, and they see you again. So it's both, and so having the ability to support that path and just be wherever they are as effectively as you can. On some of the long ones, we've seen 7, 8, 9, 10 visits in that path to conversion, and that's one of the top paths. It's a fairly common thing to see that many times people thinking about it and looking at it and see it in all different ways. It's kind of crazy to look at.
Well, yeah, in fact, I mean, I do this, too. I was like, oh, God, I saw that. Where did I see that? And I'll try to recreate what search phrase did I do to find that person, right? If I had a company, and I'll type it in, and then my browser will help me by showing that was a visited link, and I'll go, oh, yes, that's the guy, and I click it again, right? Stuff like that. You're not. It really is about impressions. Our good friend Ben says, it's like reach tells, frequency sells. And so I used to laugh at all these branding ads on the highway with the woman running in the rain and the Nike swoosh and no text. That's ridiculous, totally untrackable advertising. It turns out that's where we are today. I mean, you've got to get those branding ads. You've got to get lots and lots of impressions, because as you point out, Michelle, they'll find you in some long-tail search. They won't necessarily come back, or maybe they will. They'll touch you, 7 times in different channels, multiple times in the same channel, and then they happen to find you, or they remember some portion of your name, and click a paid ad. We call AdWords the winner.
And every time they switch devices or switch browsers, or their cookies get reset, whatever you would have known about them before, you don't know about them anymore. So
it's a new human. It's a new human.
Yeah, it's a brand new person that just showed up appeared, wing, right there on the homepage of my website and bought a whole bunch of stuff. And that's all I know about it.
But about the only thing you say good about the tracking we have online is it's way better than what people at retail have.
Well, still, other than phone numbers, it's better than billboards.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Keith asked a really great question, and I'll go ahead and answer it for him, and then Dan, you can expound on how much else I'm going to like not give him. And so, can you please talk more about how to automate the display of only the best ad on specific days once you know which ad is performing better? And Keith, the answer is that we're sounding no. That's proprietary in-house technology, and in fact, we've only started doing that. We've got several other things in the pipeline to do that even more.
It's an Adwords script that we wrote to do that.
Yep, and that's about the end of that discussion. So the answer to that is no. But thanks for asking, so we could actually go ahead and push that subliminal message out to everybody to come on board.
It uses features that are available to every Google advertiser in AdWords scripts.
Yes, that's true. Yes, that's true.
Then we tell the script which ad we want to run on which days, and then those ads run on those days.
And you can absolutely do this yourself, just as we have.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to just pause your ads and turn them back on if you want to do it by hand. You can. That used to be a huge issue, but now pause it for a couple of days, turn it back on. It's not going to be any kind of a big deal in terms of performance. So we do it 1,000 times a day now.
So let's do this. I mean, let's go ahead and wrap up here. But I think we got to the end of our questions, and Dan has actually instructed me. I've made some notes, things I want to go study as well. So I think let's talk about this. Three of us. I mean, since Corey's not here, he's off doing client work as somebody should. God knows. I think next week we probably actually ought to focus on this topic that we kind of teased out a little bit, about the multiple touches that occur within, kind of the wide to narrow part of the conversion funnel, and help people understand how to see that kind of data in Google Analytics. And we're going to have to do some kind of tricky maneuvering there to actually show this. It can't be real time. It's got to be from snapshots so we can hide client data. We don't want to be showing revenue and conversion numbers. But I mean, what do we think about that? I think that would be a really good thing for us to chat about on the next Hangout. What do you think?
I like it.
Does that mean I don't have to work next week? I can just show up and
that's right. I'll do the presentation, and you can critique and kibitz and throw fruit from the audience.
Listen to you cuss about Google Hangouts.
Yeah, there's that. Well, hopefully, yeah, we do need to talk to you about your internet accessibility. But beyond that, that's all we got. So, still using the workaround. So, for all of you that have joined us today, wow, that Southern thing came out. So, it will be something on the order of 3 hours before the replay is live. And the reality is, because of the Hangout workaround we're still using, despite the fact
we have to download it, then we have to chop off the part at the start where we were cussing at Google.
No, that's not true. That doesn't get recorded. But I mean, it gets to the wrong channel. So literally, I have to download it and upload it to the correct channel. So the replay will be live whenever I get to downloading and uploading, which will be some hours away. So just bear in mind that the replay will be delayed. Of course, those of you looking at the replay delayed, you won't know it was delayed, but never mind. So with that said, I believe it's a wrap for today. And thanks everybody wow, it's like a bunch of people still hanging on all the way to the end. And so we'll see you again next week, and even more people, at 3 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time on Tuesday, where we do these free Hangouts. And next week will be about how to analyze analytics and actually attribute, or attribute, I'm not sure the right way to say that, actually, now I think that. Using a portion of Google Analytics to understand what portions of your marketing are actually contributing to those actual conversions. Because all you're looking at is the last click, the last interaction on your website. What you're doing is you're ignoring the benefits and the actual, the value associated with those other marketing channels that probably led to that last click. So, with that tease, thanks everybody for showing up. This is Leslie Ruddy for the Mobile Brain Trust. I'm joined by Dan Thies and Michelle Chan-Sangfong and Corey Burke in absentia. And
that means you're not joined by Corey.
Yes, exactly. That was the in absentia part. And so we'll see everybody next week. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.